What's going to be on camera today. We start off today at Africam's Cat Eye Pan up in the Greater Kruger National Park. And as you can see, it is a white hot day. This is just one of those days that come about and it's only going to get hotter, which means that it's only going to get busier at these water points. And of course, these are the bull elephant that we're having a look at, busy drinking from the trough. There's a hot berg wind blowing as a cold front sweeps across the country. And so what that means is that air that is descending off the highland plateau, sort of where Campus Dam is, and Pilansberg, is heating up at about 1 degree per 100 meters that it descends, coming down from a mile up in the sky to about 400 meters above sea level, and in the process heating up along the way. And it is the time for fires when this happens. Wind speeds are high, air is dry and hot. And of course, who knows what today is going to bring. Now, it is an interactive show, so you are welcome to please send me through your questions and comments. Send through any observations that you've had or any sightings that you've had with anywhere else. I'd love to hear from you. And if you don't know how to do that, you just have to go and log on to the WildEarth website and and register there, just following the prompts on screen. And then it's live in case the name of the show didn't give it away. And so what you're looking at now is what's happening. It's 9:32 in the morning and I don't know what's going to be happening any more than you, and that lends itself to quite an exciting morning, I must be honest with you. We don't know what's going to happen. We just go with the flow, and often from these epic cameras that we have all over southern Africa. We have one in Namibia, we've got one in Kenya as well, but a multitude of cameras. We have action happening all the time. So I don't know, I'm predicting that this morning is going to be quite epic. But we have got a summary of the weather that we can expect across our different locations for you ready, and so why don't we go and have a look at that. So as you saw there, we've got a day in the high 80s and 90s across most of the country, and with the hot wind blowing, you're going to find that dehydration is a real thing today for animals here, particularly in the Kruger National Park, and hydration therefore is vitally important. And that's why we've got these early visitors at the pan. Usually we only pick up activity here in the park a little bit later on in the morning, but not today. A full-grown bull elephant this, on his own or with a friend like you've just seen him. He'll be wandering around from elephant herd to elephant herd when he's in a condition called must. So bull elephant have hormonal cycles that they go through, and this produces different behavior. So during a must period, an elephant bull will experience up to a 70% increase in testosterone, and this drives them to find breeding herds of elephant, to quest for them in fact, and to react to females that are coming into estrus. They then compete with one another through a variety of subtle and not so subtle measures. And if they're lucky, they will get a chance to mate with the female elephant and of course then put their genes into the gene pool. Now this condition can last anywhere from a couple of weeks to about 150 days and is cyclical. So they'll come into this as soon as they mature as young bull elephant, and it'll last their entire lives. Young bull elephant, the urge is suppressed by older, bigger, dominant bull elephants, and so they don't really start to compete for mating rights until they're around 35 or so. and older bull elephants, this urge wanes, and so they don't feel the compulsion as strongly as they did when they were between 35 and 45, and so it starts waning after a while. But nevertheless, the urge is real and the physiology is real, although this elephant is not in a must state. I don't think he is, at least anyway, although those temporal glands, those glands behind the ear, do look a bit swollen. Wally, you've the first to send in a comment this morning, so good morning to you. Well, good evening to you, I see. So, Wally, you are somewhere in the world that it's nighttime already. Are you behind us or in front of us? Let me know where you're calling from, Wally. It'd be good to know and share where we've got our community from all over the world. So, good evening to you, Wally. Hopefully, you are relaxed and have some time on your hands to enjoy the rest of the show. But if you're just looking at it either on your way out or on your way back in, thank you for your time. As you so often commented on these shows, elephant have the ability to make drinking water look like the most pleasurable experience ever. They just it just looks so nice. It's like, I don't know, I had a drink of orange juice a little bit earlier, which came cold out of the fridge, and it was like the best feeling ever, drinking some cold juice out of the fridge on a hot day like this. I felt like I looked like this elephant did when it went down. Ula, good morning to you. It's so great to hear from you. So welcome. And then you've asked, is must induced by the females? Ula, so no, must is not induced by the females. It is a physiological cycle that male elephant go through, very similar to female mammals who go through their estrus cycle every for humans it's every 28 days. And it's cyclical for your adult life. For elephant, their must cycles are also cyclical. From what I understand about it, though, is that it does vary from elephant to elephant. So with human ladies, for instance, it's a set 28-day cycle, plus minus, depending on a variety of different factors. But he's going to throw some mud on himself. But for elephant, bulls, must is variable, but definitely cyclical. Doesn't have anything to do with the females. However, and this is where your comment stems from, they do react to females that are in estrus very strongly. So a must bull elephant is not only, this is between inverted commas, sexier or more appealing to a female, but must bull elephants will also be more dominant over non-must bull elephants. So let's take two elephants of the same size or similar size, one in must, one not. The one in must will outcompete the one out of must for breeding rights at a female. And I think that that's probably an evolution of this must cycle, why it occurs. It's a way of eliminating too much competition around estrus females. And you can see a must bull elephant. They stride about the place. That increase in testosterone gives them a certain swagger. There are telltale signs, of course. They dribble a very foul-smelling fluid from themselves, and it's just this overactive glandular secretions that come out. It looks a lot like urine, but it isn't. And then their temporal glands swell up. They can weigh a couple of kilograms each, and will make that. If you have a look behind this elephant's eye, there's that ridge of bone that extends back to the ear. The gland sits inside there, and when it's swollen, it sort of balls up and can stick out further than the eye. This elephant looks like it's swollen, but I actually just think it's a bit sign of the times, of the seasons. Um, they also tend to have their ears above their shoulders more often than not, and they are and can be aggressive. So it's not to say that when you meet a musk bull elephant, the first thing he's going to do is run you over. It's just when you notice that a bull elephant's in must, you need to be a little bit more careful around them. They can be a bit more touchy, and they've got a lot of stuff to deal with. Pretty cool. So you notice that he didn't use the water that's in the trough to spray behind his ears. And that's because digging around in the bottom of the pan like he did with his trunk is giving him access to sediment that's settled on the bottom of the pan. And of course, wet with mud is better than just wet behind their ears in terms of cooling their ears down. He's now finished. Had a drink, and we'll carry on with his feeding.
Are you WildEarth's biggest fan? Well, we have a brand new competition for you. Join our naturalists on Safari Live and listen out for weekly questions. To enter the competition, head over to our Instagram, search #WildEarthFanOfTheMonth and comment your answer under the post. The monthly winner will be determined by the total quickest and most correct answers. We announce our winner at the end of every month. Tune in to Safari Live daily.
So these Patterson's eland are characterized by being rusty brown rather than grey, and having that quite pronounced four-leg stripe on the back of their legs, and a quite indistinct but noticeable white stripe that goes down their flanks behind their shoulders. Other than that, they are looking pretty much the same. But I'm just being told that we've got a tortoise busy running across the view at Cat Eye Pan. Let's go and have a look at that. That is so cool, and that's the beauty of having these cameras everywhere, is that we can quickly just shift focus. That is a leopard tortoise. So of the two species of tortoise that we have occurring in this part of the world. This is the larger of the two, the leopard tortoise. And tough for me to say whether it's a male or female. You actually have to have a look at the bottom plate, so their belly. If it's concave, it's a male. If it's flat, it's a female. We can't see. Shame, he's got a few ticks on his butt. They often get infested with ticks, even into their nose. What we're going to look is a tortoise going for a drink. So that's a rare sighting, to be honest. This tortoise has been estivating for the last couple of months, in other words, not mobile, and has come out today and walked to this pan to have a drink. And it is not a turtle, so not a terrapin, it is a tortoise. They do drink. They can store water for very long periods of time in a sac called a bursa inside their body, but that gets depleted through the dry season, and in particular on a hot day like this. And this tortoise has come out of hiding, probably underground, in a cavity below a tree stump or in a termite mound, made its way to the pan and is now drinking. And it's a very intimate moment, to be honest with you. You don't see tortoises drinking very often at all. And so it really is a rare sighting at one of these pans. And so something that we definitely need to celebrate. Pity we can't see it actually drinking, but that's okay. We know what it's doing. The birds in the background, for those of you keeping bird lists, are blue waxbills. They've all flown away now, except they probably will come back. What a great sighting, actually. Morning, Steve. You are calling us from the UK and say that it's great to be watching Wild Earth with a cup of tea. Hey, Steve. It's great to hear from you. I'm super chuffed that you've got your cup of tea with you. I actually had 2 cups of coffee this morning, and then my orange juice, which is like the best thing I've ever had to drink, it seems like, in the last 1,000 years. Definitely not as pleasurable as the water that this tortoise is drinking. So to come back to the physiology of these tortoises, so they eat plant material. They are suited to dry and arid areas. Because their bodies can withdraw and store water from the food that they eat quite effectively. They don't need to drink, but they do when it's available. But the last time that it rained here was many, many months ago, the beginning of the year. It rained a lot, actually, enough to form puddles. And a lot of the juicier plants have gone dormant as the season went into winter. Now, we have, I'm just trying to think when our autumn starts, what date it is. May, I think. I think the 1st of May or the 1st of April is our first day of autumn. And then we basically just go into a dry period where the bush dries out from then to now, and it'll only really start raining again with any significance. So with rain enough to create puddles that stick around for a while. We'll get 1 or 2 rainstorms now in October, a few in November, but only mid-December into January will we really start getting the big rains. And so the bush dries out, tortoises dry out, and even a tortoise like this, which can store water in their bursa inside their bodies, will run out of water. Luckily enough, this tortoise smelt the water or heard the elephants having a bath and has come out of hiding. No use moving around when there's no plants and no water, right? Come out of hiding where they estivate. It's not quite a hibernation, but it's close to it. And has now moved on to the pan and is busy having a long drink. How did I know it was a leopard tortoise? I know because of the round shell and smooth edge to the back of the shell across the back feet, and the colors. The serrated hingeback tortoise is much flatter, so flattened dorso-ventrally, and the back edge of the shell is scalloped and over the back feet, and so isn't the same shape as the leopard tortoise. The shell obviously offering the tortoise some measure of protection. It's bony. It's actually, the tortoise's skin are the scutes, the scales that you can see there. Those two ridges are actually its vertebrae. So the bony shell of a tortoise is in fact the skeleton of the tortoise, which is moved to the outside of the body. All the organs are attached to the inside of that, so work internally. When you have a look at, if you ever are able to look at a tortoise shell in your life, take a look into the shell and you'll see what I'm talking about. Here we've got our, looks like our blue wax bills are back. Beautiful powdery blue color. Right, while we're letting this tortoise have a drink, we'll keep an eye on the camera feed, so when he's finished, we'll try and have a look at it again if it doesn't move off too quickly. We've got some elephants to go and have a look at Tembe, and we don't go there very often, so why don't we go and have a look at that? The Tembe Elephant Park, where we are now at Africam's Tembe feed, is in one of South Africa's provinces called KwaZulu-Natal, right on the southern side of Mozambique, right up onto the border, and is a place where some of South Africa's, in fact, it's recorded as having South Africa's largest tusked bull elephant. And there you can see a bull elephant with, we're at a pretty decent range away from this pan, and you can have a look at that elephant, still looks massive. And you can see off in the background, we've got on the right-hand side, we've got another massively tusked bull elephant. It's just, this park is just insane with elephant. So the Tembe Elephant Park in KwaZulu-Natal, we don't come to this particular video feed from Africam too often, and it's because the bush around the pan is very thick. This is quite typical of the bushveld here in this part of the world, where rainfall is high, humidity is high. It is very hot here in this part of the world as well. Today, for instance, we will go up over the hundreds, way into the 40s. There is predicted to be some rain here this afternoon, so a weather system is moving across the country at a rapid pace, and the winds that it's bringing are going to be quite high. We're looking at wind speeds of over 40 kilometers an hour in the next 24 hours, and it's going to be shaking this tree around, but will thankfully also reduce the temperature a little bit. Another big bull elephant with shiny tusks that just walked in. Smartly shown off by that other one. Can go and find shade somewhere else. One thing that I noticed at this feed, the elephant bulls tend to hang around with each other in these groups much more than at other places. So, and I'm not quite sure why we find these large groups of bull elephant hanging around together at Tembe. The only reason that I can think of, and this is because I haven't been there and spoken to the field guides in the area, so this is just my assumption, right? So please don't take it with a pinch of salt. I think that, open patches of bush like this at this pan are rare in this particular area. And I think you're either finding mineral deposits or open bush with this deep shade underneath big trees and this abundance of water or these pools of water. I mean, that the elephants are congregating here from time to time in a shared resource and just enjoy each other's company as a result. You can see them all having a mud bath. Apart from this having the largest tusk bulls, some of the largest tusk bulls in South Africa, it's also got one of the highest bird counts. And I'm told that that you guys can hear the birds chirping away merrily as the bird party in the area probably is in full swing at this time of the day. Nick, you've asked if the dirty water isn't bad for their stomach. So firstly, good morning, Nick. Nick, look, elephant will prefer to drink clean water whenever possible. So given a choice, an elephant will always choose to drink the cleanest water possible. And in some cases will even dig for clean water next to open pools of water when they can. But will drinking dirty water make them sick? I don't think necessarily. I think it's most likely that the illness that they'd get from dirty water would be because of contaminated water rather than just muddy or silted up water. I mean, too much silt and sediment I don't think is good for them, same as it wouldn't be for anyone. I think they've got a higher tolerance than what we would, for instance. But the water itself would need to be contaminated for it to actually make them sick. And this is a pretty wild area, and so I don't think that the water here is contaminated. Gosh, these guys are having a proper bath. There you guys. Oh, that's so cool. Seeing elephants enjoy water and mud is just, I don't know, there's just something about it. Watch this guy have a bath. Epic. And there goes the other one. And let's see if this other one decides to join in the party. Yep, there he goes. Super cool. woolly-necked stork in the background. Yes, these cameras. These cameras are just fantastic. Look at my face, like halfway closer than I had it just now to my screen. So 50, you've sent in a comment saying that this is really cool to watch. I agree with you. It's uncommon to see so many bull elephant together in one place. I mean, we see a lot of bull elephant together at Aldonia in Kenya, but never this many. And on top of it all, you've got some of these giant tusked bulls. And so, no, I agree with you, So 50. It is super cool. And on top of that, quite rare. That water does look a bit green and scummy, doesn't it? Like, elephant quite often defecate and urinate in the water when they get down there. And this time of the year, it hasn't been raining a lot. A little bit of rain forecast for this afternoon, 60%. There won't be very much rain. It's all just frontal rain. These low pressure systems that get smashed up from Antarctica and come over the southern African continent. There's a nyala, a female nyala. Nikki and Batman, you're saying good morning, enjoying the elephants. Good morning to you. Nikki and her cat Batman in the UK are part of our community out here, and they both love watching the show. Batman, in fact, has, I don't know, some genetic memories from when he used to be a saber-toothed cat or something out in the African savannah. He apparently watches the screen quite delightfully. So good morning to you guys. And so, yes, 100%. Look at this guy having a proper swim. That is a deep mud pool. Is he raising his trunk out of the water? Washing his tusks nice and clean. I can't actually hear what you are hearing, but I'm imagining that you can hear the splashes and the merrymaking. And our Zoomy from this particular camera feed tells us that this morning there were some lions around. And from a hot day like this, it wouldn't surprise me if those lions are still in the area, although with so many elephant around, you'd probably find that they'd have moved off a couple of 100 meters or a kilometer or so away from the pan. But as we've been keeping on saying, it is the time of year when lion prides start to set up camp on the edges of these pans, because animals have to come and drink. And as the permanent water sources dwindle out there in the bush, more and more animals concentrate around the pools that are left. And of course, it doesn't go long unnoticed by the predators. And so this time of the year, the full-grown male nyala, and have a look at these horn tips. You see how they splay away from each other the last inch or so? That shows that that is a bull nyala past his prime, but no less magnificent for it. When their horn tips are parallel to each other, they are in their prime. Gosh, look at this Ellie just having the best time. So cool. Now the elephant coming out of the bush. wet already. So this particular one's already had a swim or something in the last few hours. But in keeping with the spirit of this particular show and the fact that we need to pay homage and respect to all of our camera feeds and all of their characters, we're going to move on. We've got some Ellies that have just arrived at the Djuma Waterhole. And so why don't we come a couple of 100 kilometers north and go and have a look at them as well. So we've now crossed across the kingdom of the Swaziland, and more than halfway up the 450 kilometer length of the Kruger National Park, and we're at Djuma Private Game Reserve's dam, and a very windy day. So this is only about 100 kilometers from where I'm sitting right now, and it's not as windy where I am as it is here. So this weather front is coming in quick and strong. And this is a breeding herd of elephants. So we're at Tembe, we were with a whole bunch of male elephant, not in a herd. They just came together around the Waterhole coincidentally. This is a breeding herd of elephant. They will be with each other, at least the females, for their entire lives. Led by a matriarch. She'll be the biggest one. And a herd that's a little bit smaller than most. Usually they're around about 6 individuals. But there's no doubt that one of those cows in the front, the cows will probably be pregnant. They're at that age now. The trunk up, questing for scent. In fact, Ellies don't enjoy windy days, much the same as what some of us don't enjoy windy days either. It makes them edgy. And I think it's because there's just a lot of movement. There's a hippo. And so Djuma Dam has got a couple of hippo in it as well. 4, I think. There we go. All 4 hippo present. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hippo, in fact. So we picked up one. Once there was 4, now there's more. It's really cool to see that. Hippo move around at night time, unlike the elephant, who tend to move mostly during the day, except this time of the year where they need to feed a lot. That elephant's got her trunk up there. She is smelling something enticing. Racing away to find it. Everyone else in tow. Matriarch bringing up the rear. Beautiful matriarch. In fact, very large-bodied, large-tusked female. Baby trying to catch up there with mom. She is striding away. Trunk up again. Definitely got a smell in her nose from something. So this small pod of hippo would have moved in here because of the wet year, so they would have moved out of more permanent water sources in an effort to reduce competition for food. They're grass eaters, bulk feeders, in fact, coming out at night to feed on what's left of the lawns within quite a considerable distance of this Juma pan. Returning here, though, and the hope is that they stick around for as long as they can. This is an ephemeral pan, though, and will dry up at some point, and then they'll move back to the permanent water sources where they'll congregate in large groups, where competition for food and space becomes a problem again. And that's just the nature of things. That's just how hippo go. Aquatic mammals, a contact species during the day, loving to lie up with each other. But we've still got that beautiful collection of very large elephant bulls at Tembe. And while we've got the benefit of them, why don't we go and have a look at them again? They're tucked up into pretty much the furthest east of any of the feeds that we have. This is us back at the Tembe Elephant Park in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. And I just want to apologize for a little gremlin that's crept in and given us a faint buzzing noise to the feed. Our technicians are working on it. Look how clean these ellies have rubbed their tusks in there, bathing and wrestling with one another. Gleaming white against their grey skin. Mostly elephant tusks are sort of covered in mud and are various shades of grey and brown, but they are stained by the vegetable juices of the trees that they eat. But the abrasiveness of the mud and of their of their trunks can actually clean their tusks quite nicely, and there you can see how white they can become, quite heavily contrasted against their wet grey skins. And another female nyala in the foreground, common antelope in this particular area. Now, what is confusing is the difference between a nyala and a bushbuck, and we have a bushbuck that we can have a look at on the Willifrans River. So let's shoot up there and go and have a look at the difference between the two. Us now coming relatively far north in the Kruger and having a look at a shy antelope that is also not common occurrence in any of the populations. This is a female bushbuck, also belonging to the spiral-horned antelope group, so them and nyala are competing for the same niche. And these are shy, thicket-living or loving antelope, and they tend to not be as common as the nyala. Although I think they are just as beautiful. They're a little bit more, I don't know what to say, like they're shyer, and so they come across as a little bit more vulnerable and a little bit smaller, and are a favorite food of leopard and wild dog, who smash them to a point where it's, like I said, it's quite difficult to see bushbuck. It's not something, they're quite common in campgrounds where they become habituated to people movement just through necessity, I think. Very alert. You can see that faint stripes and spots. Males have got these very strongly pointed horns. There's another one in the background. Her coat, she's a bit younger, so you can see her coat is a little bit redder. Gosh, we've been lucky today. Leopard tortoise, bushbuck, ginormous groups of elephant, massive elephant bulls swimming around like dolphins. Quite nice. Yeah, exactly, Nadine. Who knows what's next? Maybe we're lucky and we can see some wild dog or cheetah or leopard on one of our feeds today. It's a day for anything, to be honest with you. It's not just Saturday and we feel it. But it's a day where there's this weather front sweeping across South Africa. And it's disturbing the atmosphere to such a degree that everything's reacting to it. Karamoja, you want to know why we don't see sable at any of the waterholes? Karamoja, gosh, that's a good question. Firstly, sable in the wild are rare. So depending on where you are in Africa, sable to more or less of a degree are like these bushbuck. They're not a very commonly seen antelope at all. And then the areas where we have cameras, so although we've got so many cameras all over the place, the areas that we have these cameras are not typical sable areas. Sable occupy a niche where they feed on grass in relatively dry places, moving long distances between their feeding grounds and water. Is there a chance that we see sable at one of our feeds? In enough time, yes, we will see sable. But it's going to be a rare occurrence and quite special to see, just like these bushbuck. It's not common that we see these bushbuck. In fact, I've never seen it while I've been presenting the show. We do see them on the safaris from time to time, but it's not a very common thing to see at all. Have we seen sable at Djuma? Yes. There's a sable that comes in every now and again, specifically around this time of the year, these drier times of the year. Will it come down to Djuma Pan for a drink? Who knows? With these new Africam feeds that are joining us all the time, anything's possible. And so yeah, it's just a question of time. Time and luck. And timing. Of course, these live shows, we don't know what we're going to see any more than you do. Brian Africa, you've made a comment that, Brian Africa, you've made a comment that I agree with you 100% on, is that they got no idea that we're watching. And for me, the ideal when you're out in the wilderness is to be having a close interaction with an animal without it changing its behavior because you're there. So for me, it's a failure if for some reason or another we disturb an animal because of our presence. I want to be looking at an animal as close as I can get, but without disturbing it. That's the ideal. And it's the one thing that I really enjoy about these camera feeds that we have, is that we get these really close-up views of these animals doing what they would be doing naturally without us changing their behavior whatsoever. They're not aware of our presence or moving away from us or in any way showing that they're aware that we're looking at them, and yet we're able to share portions of their lives for extended periods of time. So for me, it's just a win. Are we there? Can we feel the wind blowing on our skin and smell the bush around us and Are we aware of other animals moving around us? No, I mean, that's obviously why a physical safari will be more engaging to more senses. But from a look and hear perspective, um, you can't beat these cameras, to be honest with you. Not in my opinion. And I've been doing this for close on 25 years now. So I think what they're doing is I've noticed that as the wind is blowing, the leaves from this jackalberry are falling onto the floor. It's getting its new coat of leaves, and the older leaves, slightly older leaves, are falling off of the tree in the wind, and the bushbuck are feeding on the dropped leaves. That's why I think they're here. This one's now got a morsel. They're browsers, they're not grazers, so they're not eating grass, they are eating leaves. Ring-necked dove, center bottom. For those birders out there. There's some other type of path that these bushbuck are next to. And you often find these game paths, quite well-trodden game paths next to the rivers, parallel to the river. And I see that there's some elephant dung on the path, so it's probably an elephant path going down to a crossing or a particularly good water point. We can't see it right now because we zoomed in, but this Africam on the Williefontein River has a broad view both up and down the river, which is fantastic. It's one of the largest rivers in the Kruger National Park, or that flow through the Kruger National Park, and in fact flows into an enormous dam called the Masinjia Dam in Mozambique, and its associated national park that's attached to the Kruger and extends the Kruger's land surface area by some measure. And so quite an important river, in fact, and a river that I've spent a lot of time on in the past 10 years or so. A river that's very close to my heart. Lots and lots of memories. See the wind starting to pick up. Right, one place we haven't been to this morning yet is our Africam tau feed in Madikwe. And it is usually a place with at least some action going on. So let's leave these bushbuck. We've celebrated them. They are spectacular. I hope you enjoy this female walking up to us with her dainty stripes and patterns on her legs and, I don't know, rust brownie colored, chocolate colored coat. And just going to have a look at what's happening at top. So just like that, we've come more than 1,000 kilometers west. We're now in Madikwe Game Reserve at Tau Lodge, at our Africam feed there, and we're looking at 4 waterbuck, bulls, and a springbuck. That is a white and black, with a white antelope with a black stripe in the background. And these are some young waterbuck. Except for the one there in the very back, he looks like he's a bit bigger. Or sorry, this one, yeah, the two on the left are bigger than the two on the right. Tough to say whether that springbuck's a male or a female because they're both sexes have horns. The waterbuck have come down for a drink, as their name would suggest. They quite enjoy hanging around water sources. Springbuck don't need to drink. They will when there's water available, but similar to that tortoise that we saw at Cattai Pan a little bit earlier, they don't need to. A lot of their water can be taken out of the vegetation, the food that they eat. Their bodies are just adapted to that.
BirdLife South Africa is translating birding facts into the country's 12 official languages. Download the Birder app today. For every 12 birds logged by a South African citizen, Birder will make a donation towards this critical project. Alternatively, visit the BirdLife website to make a direct donation. Go wild, go birding with WildEarth.
When they're jousting with each other. And avoiding unnecessary injury as a result. Calm, easy, different pace to our normal pace, right? Camera feed is just forcing us to be present and enjoy the moment, hearing the bush around us. like I was saying, it's a lesson for me over the last couple of weeks or days has been a lesson in being a being rather than a human doing, and just being present and trying to just slow the pace down a bit. We get caught up in the rush of things, or I get caught up in the rush of things. Don't have time for this and can't do this, and don't have time for a walk or a cuddle or whatever the case may be. And I've just really enjoyed learning from these animals, particularly the elephants that I've been watching, on how to just be present. Earth lover, you say that the water back here look brown, more brown here, whereas the ones you've been looking at or used to at Juma are grayer. Um, I suppose I get where you're coming from there, Earth lover. I mean, from this particular angle, looking at the fur, looking at the undercoat, you could say that they were browner. And the soil here in Madekwe in some places is very red. And so, they could pick up that reddish color from the soil that they're lying down on. I personally wouldn't say that they're brown. I mean, I get where you're coming from, and I can see, perhaps that undercoat. We're having a look at there. It could be a bit redder, and then they could have, of course, laid down in some red sand. But I'm not picking up any noticeable differences personally. But it could also just be my screen. Just the color grading on my screen, and so I'm not picking it up as vividly as what you are. But yeah, as Nadine's saying, it could also just be the lighting. It just could be the angle of the sun today, the amount of dust in the atmosphere at this particular location, the way the camera is reading the light and transferring it to your screen, and the way the screen is portraying the light. So tough to say, to be honest with you, without actually being there in person. Right. So, in the name of the Live at the Waterhole show, let's go and have a look at another waterhole. A few kilometers from where we are now is Jamala. We haven't been there yet today, and so let's go and have a look and see what's hanging around that quite active pan. Aha. So as that map showed you, we're not too far away from Tau, the African Tau feed. We're now at Jamala, and we've got a Cape buffalo, some zebra, and quite a large herd of elephant. And they're all clustered around the water at the moment. Quite a nice view. You may be hearing a few construction noises, although it is Saturday, but it is Saturday morning. Jamala burnt down a couple of months ago, and the builders are furiously trying to get it out of the ground. And golly, this is a big female elephant. She must be the biggest female elephant I've seen in quite some time. This one walking across the screen now. Not that tall, but big, big in body. Goodness me. So, yeah, Jamal is being built furiously and is very much needed. So, excuse the noise of the builders, but we need to get the camp. They need to get the camp, not we. We're not having anything to do with the construction. But Jamal is needing to get the camp out of the ground and operational for a variety of reasons. We're paramount in that in these very remote areas, these safari operations provide a lot of employment for people who would otherwise be restricted with options. And so for their sakes, we need to get the camp built quick. It's amazing what I'm noticing about Jamala every time we come is as the dry season progresses, it's getting whiter and whiter. I'm assuming that because of the color of the soil here, that's got that particular light gray, and the fact that there's so much mud around, that everything's getting coated with a fine layer of dust kicked up here when the wind blows. And it's getting this sort of white color, whiting out. It's two Cape buffalo, one having a bit of a scratch, it seems, on that stump. These elephants would have displaced them, much to their disgust, I'm sure. Yo, a lot of elephant having a mud bath and a drink here. The zebra drinking as well. They're very active pandas. We often see any number of animals around it constantly. It's very, very rare does it not have something at it. And very different to Tau, which has that a lot more vegetation, it would seem. But often we see more elephant here than we do there, for whatever reason. Alta, you saying thank you for a fantastic channel. It's always great. You're always so full of compliments, Alta. Thank you. We all appreciate it. So I think everyone. And as we like to say, it takes a team to bring this to you, including all of you that watch it. So it's not just about our partners and our staff bringing a show to you about this. It's also about you watching it and putting your eyeballs on the screen. So it's a team effort. All of us together bring this to each other, I think. It's so nice. That elephant cow that's standing sort of white one, that right of center, she's just so big. I'm just remarking on how healthy she looks. She's just a really good looking elephant. Gonna give birth to some stocky babies, that's for sure. The wind has just arrived by me, so when we were at Djuma a little bit earlier, the wind was howling, and Djuma was 100 kilometers south. And that was about 25 minutes, 30 minutes ago. And the wind has just arrived. The trees outside my window have started to shake. So quite nice to see. Right, we saw that we got a few gremlins coming into the screen from our internet connection out there. So while our technicians sort it out, why don't we go and have a look at Akakuya, Namibia. In fact, we came thousands of kilometers further west, across the width of the African continent, into Namibia, right into the north of Namibia, where we've got Etosha National Park. And to their Okakweo camps, pans video feed. Okakweo being one of the more popular of the three camps from a tourist point of view, at least anyway. And this pan being a very rich source of wildlife. So, starting at the bottom of the pan, we've got the springbuck. Going left around the pan, we've got some kudu. Other side of the pan, we have an oryx. The back there in the distance, it looks like we've got some more oryx, possibly some zebra, tough to see. And these are the usual suspects around this pan. Literally, in spite of the fact that it's inside or adjacent to one of the world's largest salt pans, easily seen from space, and in a desert, Etosha has an incredible wealth of large mammals, all of which are clustered around these permanent water sources. It's going to be quite exciting. Often we get hazy views over this pan, but very rarely do we find clouds. But I think as the season progresses and we're going to be seeing the weather patterns change, even though this is Namibia and a very dry country, I think it's going to be lovely for us to see the cumulus clouds building up on the horizon prior to the rains falling. And although I love that blue sky that we can see and the dryness and the abundance, super abundance of animals around this pan during the dry season, there is a certain expectation that the oncoming wet brings. So cool.
How much do you know about birds? To conclude our birding challenge, we are hosting a fireside chat. Join us as we celebrate our feathery friends whose chirps liven up our days. Come along for interesting discussions with our special guests from BirdLife South Africa and find out more about their big birding projects on the horizon. Spread your wings and soar with WildEarth.
But who knows? It's still early days. You're going to get one brave springbuck that just decides to hell with it and goes for a swim.
Welcome to Destination Safari. This evening, steeped in history, we are going to be exploring Leeuwenbosch Country House and Shearers Lodge.
Right, so we seem to be back from a voice point of view. We apologize for this relative silence. We're having a few gremlins creep into our system that took sound away from a while, or our ability to talk at least, away for a while. We seem to have problem solved it. Great team of guys in Johannesburg, furiously working away at trying to get it done. In the meantime, we've had some oryx wade out into the pan and are drinking and cooling their bellies down. And then the springbuck has sort of never ceased to mill about, constantly moving sort of from one side of the pan to another. I haven't quite figured out yet how and why they're moving and doing what they're doing. It does add quite a nice texture to the pan. Nice. And we've got a springbuck that's wading out. Not typical for them to go into that portion of the pan. They usually go in from the beach there where the oryx are. Everywhere you look, at sort of every level, there's movement. Great place to be. Earth Lover, you've commented that Okakoya's on your bucket list, as it should be, Earth Lover, to be honest with you. Seems like we've got an elephant coming down to drink as well. Keep your eye on the right. I see a characteristic swinging ear there. There you go. One of the bulls of Etosha. Let's see if he goes for some. So, Earth Lover, 100%. Etosha should be on your bucket list. If you want to see the pans with water in them, obviously, sort of the January through to March would be a good place to come. But animals tend to be quite widely dispersed. But for me, the best time in Etosha is this time of the year. So late September, October, if you can get away then. And my favorite camp is Halali, although, it's just because of my experiences there. Okwe is just as cool. And Namatomi, the other camp on the eastern side of Etosha, is also amazing and has its own sort of unique flair to it. I would argue that you self-drive through the park, but that's just my sense of adventure coming through. I've just had such incredible sightings and experiences just on with my closest friends. So there you go. That's a little bit of personal insight from me about Etosha. You can see this elephant came in, snuck in from a game path on the right. Off to the right is where the salt pans are. Huge expanse of salt. Watch this Ellie just make his way past us, and hopefully he stops and goes for a swim.
Attention all WildEarth fans. It's that time of the year when the sun rises earlier and sets later. And WildEarth is shifting show times. From October, our daily sunrise safari is moving an hour earlier. Live at the Waterhole is moving an hour later, and our daily sunset safari is moving half an hour later. Don't miss a moment. WildEarth, it's in your nature.
You'll notice that you'll notice that these are big elephant bulls. They're easily as big as the elephant bulls we have a look at anywhere else at our video feeds, but they don't have the same length or condition of tusk. And that's most likely because of a diet-related issue. This is a desert, and although there's relatively a lot of vegetation, as you can see from the bush at the end of this open plain, in areas where elephants have some or other type of deficiency of some sort, their tusks are never really long. They can be quite brittle, and it is a common thing amongst elephant that you see northern Namibia and in Botswana, where the tusks are relatively short and almost all of them show damage. But it doesn't make them any less spectacular. The fact that these elephants live in this area, amazing. Have a look at these oryx just wading in. It is so special to see. But nevertheless, we've been on the Okokweya feed for quite some time as we've been solving these problems. And of course, it's not the only video feed that we have. So why don't we shoot east and go and have a look at what's been happening at Tau over the last couple of minutes. So talking about Botswana bull elephant, we're now in Madikwe. We're not in Botswana. We're in South Africa at Africam Tau. And this is an enormous bull elephant, also with short, stubbier tusks, considering what we see at Old Donyo and Tendi, and in some places in the Kruger. It's nevertheless an enormous bull elephant. You can just see, been watching the show for a few days. We've been trying to age elephant, or teach ourselves how to age elephant. And one of the ways that you do that initially is you have a look at the sort of skull size to body size ratio. An elephant that tend to be over 45 years of age have enormous skulls in relation to their bodies, and he is one of those ellies with that big skull to body ratio. So I'm assuming we're dealing with an elephant over 45 years of age here. But he looks like he's in relatively good condition. Above 50, they start looking a bit skinny, even though they're quite big. So I think that he's probably closer to 45 than he is to 50. But it's, of course, my subjective opinion. You're welcome to your own. I'm just basing it on experience and observation. Definitely not a scientific evaluation at all. That wallow that we keep on talking about, that these elephant love, is off to the right-hand side. He looks like he's already been in it. His face is covered in mud, his face and his ears and his flanks and his back. So he's been around the water for quite some time. Busy smelling there. He's busy smelling something in the footprints. Bottom of the pan. They've got an incredible sense of smell, these elephant. Right, I'm just picking up some water to drink. Gosh, can't be very tasty. And those wildebeest getting moving. They are funny things. Chasing each other about in the background there. It's obviously a male trying to entice a female into his harem. Jenna, who's commenting or asking a question all out of the UK. Firstly, hi Jenna, how are you doing? Really good to hear from you. And then you're saying, do the edges of the waterhole need repairing with so many animals that are around here? From time to time, yes. As we've been talking about, these pans are for the majority artificial and needed because of fragmentation of wilderness areas over time, leading to a decrease in animals' access to fresh water or permanent water in drier periods of the year. And so what you can't do is, when you're pumping a pan, is you can't have it getting bigger and bigger and bigger and shallower and shallower and shallower as it sediments up, because the evaporation rate will eventually be so high that it's an unsustainable amount of water that you'd be needing to pump into the pan just to keep it full of water. And it's one of the reasons why at, say, Cat-Eye Pan, for instance, I really enjoy that well that they've got. It's a way that will stop the expansion of the edges of the pan. But like Tao shows us, these elephant, they enjoy kicking the edges of the pan at these banks, making these mud wallows. And so, yes, to answer your question briefly, it will require some maintenance from time to time. But it's a gamble, I suppose. And we're going to watch this Ellie come into this wallow. Let's see what he does. The water in this end of the pan is disgusting. I think he's mainly just going to have a shower. Their trunks are just unbelievable. So you can see how they've kicked the bank here, Jenna, and expanding the reach of this pan far past where it was originally designed for. But the ellies love these mud wallows, and it's so beneficial. And so I suppose, when do you fix it? Wait for the dry season to finish? It's a question for the conservationists to answer. Granny Mango? Gosh, what an interesting name. You've asked the question, can elephants jump into the water? Well, Granny Mango, I think you're going to have your question answered in a little bit with this Ellie. Let's have a look and see whether he dives into the pool or climbs into it. There you go. That, if nothing else, Granny Mango, would have answered that exact thing. So yeah, Nadine has just said he got a 2 out of 10 for jumping into the water. An absolute fail there from a jump point of view, but a 10 out of 10 for climbing in because he did it relatively carefully, locking his legs and just making sure that he doesn't get himself injured. So no, they won't jump into the water, Granny Mango. Elephant can't jump. They can stand on their back legs, but they cannot jump. Same as hippo. Although a conversation I had around fire yesterday with a friend of mine would suggest that he's seen hippo get over obstacles that they could only jump over. So, I suppose again, it's just subjective to experience. Um, but I've never seen an elephant jump over anything. And they won't jump into the water because of the risk of injury. Um, when you're feeding yourself and you are looking after yourself for 50 years plus, you tend to be quite risk averse. And they don't have hospitals and things out here for these ellies, at least not for injuries that are sustained themselves. Gosh, this ellie is having a proper shower. You must be hearing the most unbelievably cool noises. Yeah, they power their bellies and down their flanks, quite often shooting mud far past their bodies, but they got this real trick of throwing the water just high enough that it wets their, look at that, boom, onto the head and neck, not wasting a lot at all. You see when they flick it down their flanks and onto their bellies, often they shoot far past themselves. You can see the mud behind that elephant, how far past himself it's gone. Looks like he's not going to go into the deeper part of the wallow, which is off to the right. Although, let's not speak too hastily. Maybe we're lucky and we see him go for a swim. Cool enough. Maybe he goes over to the left of the pan to go and get some water for a drink rather than cool down. It's a hot day today. We're expecting temperatures just to the high 90s. He'd be getting quite warm, so cooling down first before a drink. Although, truth be told, he may have had a drink before coming here. We just saw him arrive sort of into the picture from the left around that other big-bodied elephant. What are you going to be doing, big guy? Having a drink from a footprint. So often what happens is as elephant walk through the mud, the water seeps into the footprint and will be a lot cleaner, relatively speaking, than the water in the pan behind him, in the wallow behind him, where it's all kicked up and agitated by other animals. And he's obviously finding it acceptably good. Similar to that other big bull elephant is also drinking out of depressions in the mud. Lenny, thank you very much for your compliment this morning. Super chuffed that you enjoy the way that I describe things. So thank you, making me blush a little bit. You can see, similar to a lot of the elephant, barring the ones that we've seen up at Tembe this morning, we're seeing elephants with short tusks. And it's more common than not to see elephant with tusks like this. We've been remarking on the big elephant we've been seeing, and at the camera locations that we have available to us in the show, we have the largest bull elephants that you can find. The majority of elephant across Namibia, Botswana, and South Africa tend to have these shorter, stubbier tusks. And there's a worry in the world that the gene for large tusk elephants is going missing. But we'll come back to this elephant. We've got a baboon that's at Old Donyo, and because we haven't been up there in quite some time, let's go and have a look at the baboon. We were worried that it was going to run away before we could get to it. As you'll notice, I enjoy and celebrate diversity. I love chopping and changing and looking at all the different things we got around the pans, and this is no exception. This is an olive baboon. I have no doubt that there's more baboons around. They hang around in these big troops. He's a bull olive baboon, and what he's doing is he's picking up some or other type of food source off of the sand. I don't know what it is. It might be termites. I'm trying to think of what he could be picking up there. It could be seeds or little shoots. It's tough to say. So this is the most. You get many primates in Africa. So it's not just baboons and vervet monkeys that we tend to see them most commonly. But Africa has a massive selection of primates, particularly in the more forested areas, so around the DRC and equatorial Africa. But on the savannas, we tend to see in Kenya the olive baboon. Closer to the coast, we see the yellow baboon, a same weight but a taller, rangier baboon. And then in South Africa and Namibia, we get the chakma baboon, which is sort of between the olive baboon and the yellow baboon in how it looks. The chakma baboon doesn't have as much of a furry, thick across the shoulders and nape of the neck coat. It also doesn't have that sort of grumpy demeanor. The yellow baboon, slightly different color, much taller, and for me, a more dangerous baboon. The way that it looks, all of the baboons can do you harm. Quite capable of taking out a leopard and chasing lions away as a group. In fact, you may have heard the story before, but I was once chased. I was on a run in Kenya, and I came around the corner, and a female baboon and a baby were in a tree. I didn't see them. And she got a fright and bailed out of the tree and started screaming. And 5 male baboons from the troops sort of banded together, like big boys like this that we're looking at now, and was just shouting at me, trying to intimidate me away. And I was on a road, I was on a run, and they intimidated me to such a point that I ended up having to go into water where there was a hippo close by to escape these baboons. I thought they were going to bite me. It's quite a scary experience, I must be honest with you. Picking between being bitten by baboons or mauled by baboons and getting smashed by a hippo. In the end, I took the hippo. It all worked out fine. I managed to get away from the baboon and rather charged with adrenaline finished my run. There's a Patterson's eland. Not concerned with baboons in the least. Very similar to that bushbuck and the kudu that we briefly saw, the eland are also part of the spiral-horned antelope. And in fact, let me just think. So we've seen nyala today, kudu, eland, and bushbuck. 4 of the 5 spiral-horned antelope. And we won't see the bongo on any of the feeds. We don't have cameras in areas where the bongos occur. But pretty much we got a 4 out of 4 then in that particular case for the spiral-horned antelope group that we see in Africa. So I don't know what, you may have heard the screaming as they ran off there. I'm not sure what disturbed them. But babies were picked up and Right, sorry about that. We were getting a bit of picture breakup as you saw there. So some gremlins in the Eldonia feed, and we quickly shoved us over a couple of countries into Madikwe and back at Tau where these Ellies having their mud bath. And so apologies, but also not so sorry. Look at what we're looking at. Really cool.
World Animal Day is here, and WildEarth is rallying for a battle of the ages. One naturalist reigns victorious, and the time for redemption has arrived. It's Safari Bingo. Catch the chaos and contention as our naturalists compete to spot the most animals. Join us on our sunset safaris and spot the next sovereign of the safari. WildEarth, we are Safari. Here's an ostrich top left of the screen. So not only are we graced with the presence of the elephant in the mud wallow, but we also have an ostrich, which is in the background, the world's largest bird, coming in at about 120 odd kilograms. Pretty cool. There we go. We got another big elephant that just came in there, a huge bodied bull. You probably found that that's exactly what they were listening to.
That elephant's also going to come and have a bit of a mud bath. He's a massive bull. Goodness me. I think he's sent us in a question. I don't really know how to. I don't have the knowledge just yet to be able to verify it or not. But Nikki, all the way from the UK, you've asked, according to the WWF, there are about 20,000 elephants killed every year. I'm assuming that that's across the board in Africa. I'm not going to argue with an established society like the World Wildlife Fund. If that's what they're saying on their website, then we've got to take that as true from their point of view. I don't know. I don't follow conservation news like that closely. It sounds feasible. Um, Elephant are definitely poached and shot for their ivory still, and have been for thousands of years. This elephant looks like he's going to go down and get his belly full of mud, or he's just a bit stuck. He's a bit stuck. Won't be stuck for long though. They definitely have great off-road capacity. There you go. Something that would have gotten a tank stuck. I just breeze through. That Ellie there, let's see what he's going to do, this big guy. I've got a feeling that once he's wet his flanks, he might actually get into the water. He's really big and old though. It's not often that you see big elephant like this get into the water, but let's give him the benefit of the doubt. So yeah, elephant are definitely still killed for their ivory and for meat, etc., all over the place. Crop destruction through human wildlife conflict as well. So definitely not all sunshine and roses out there. Oh, look at the end of his trunk. He's got an injury. Doesn't seem like it's done too much to stop him from using it, but there's definitely, if you have a look, he's got a scar on his trunk. Who knows how that was hurt? Could be anything, from a snare, bitten by another elephant, caught in something. Excuse the slight shudder on the camera. And we're at a pretty big zoom, and so any small movement from whatever source is exaggerated. You can see this elephant giving this kudu and the wildebeest and the warthog a little bit of a run for their money. Being as big as what they are quite intimidating. Seeing this female warthog as well. Look at there, she goes down and goes for her wallow. All the animals enjoying the mud at the moment. Warthog are quite comical in that when they get up, they usually go for. Once they've gotten the mud into all their nooks, they go for a bit of a scratch. So I think we're in for a treat. Such a great view there with this massive bull elephant, this wildebeest coming down, ostrich, the warthog, they've left now. See them out of their wallow. Here's that female having a bit of a scratch on that muddy bank. Just getting herself all covered in mud, along with the other one, just on the right of the screen. So much action going on. It's really cool to see. Warthog getting all her bits covered. Similar to the elephant, they'd use the mud to cool themselves down, act a bit of a sun shield. And then in addition, the mud also clings to and exposes ticks. And then they go and they scratch them off. The warthog just having exited the screen on the right-hand side. Kudu in the background. Ostrich still around. Super cool to see. It's difficult to judge what these ellies are going to do. Those warthog true to form just up and left. But we've still got kudu, wildebeest, elephant, and ostrich. And yeah, and then in the right in the bottom of the screen here, is that a young waterbuck? So, goodness, so much. So if you're just joining into the show, this is a live show. So what we're looking at now is what's happening right now at Africam Tau. And it's 11:38 in the morning here where I am. The bump you're seeing is because I think those waterbuck are bumping the camera stand. So we've got those waterbuck right up underneath the camera, and I think they're brushing up against the stand, bumping the camera around. And we pretty much don't do any editing other than, adding my voice to it, and then some of the straps, the name straps, like you're seeing up at the top. So it's a live feed coming from many different camera locations across Southern Africa, Namibia, and Kenya. But it's also interactive, so you also can ask me some questions. And please do, if you don't know how, you just have to log on to the WildEarth website and register there, following the prompts, and you'll then be able to ask me some questions or send through, I don't know, any observations that you've got, and no question is silly. Don't worry about that. We're all here to learn from one another. Some have more information about certain things than others, and we live to learn. We all make mistakes, and we all celebrate in each other's and teaching others. So ask away. There's no such thing as a silly question. You see that this Ellie is relatively old. If you have a look at the end of his tail, you'll see that there's very little hair there. Now, elephant will go bald for any number of reasons. Usually they have quite a long tail of hair, very similar to those wildebeest exiting the screen on the left-hand side. But as Ellies get older and they, above 40, 45 years of age, their tail can get a bit balder. And that Ellie's no exception. Now this waterbuck is right underneath the camera. And as we were busy chatting about a little bit earlier, one of the really cool things about this particular camera is the fact, or these cameras that we've got all over the place, is the fact that we have very little to no impact on what these animals are doing with their day-to-day lives. And for me, the ideal is when we can look at these animals as close as we can, but without disturbing their natural way of things at all. So without having any impact on what they're doing with their day. And although we, get to hear and see the animals through a video format like we've got now, and we can't feel the wind or smell the mud in the wallow, and feel the temperature, etc., we've got this really amazing capacity to, as we've just seen now, zoom in with quite great resolution and watch these animals do their thing without being bothered by us. And I, for one, love that sort of thing. And we've got this waterbuck bull. He's a full-grown adult male. Busy feeding on some grass on this muddy patch, trying not to get too deep into the mud. You can see he's probably already chest deep.
Do you want to touch the lives of future protectors of our Earth? Thanks to our wonderful WildEarth explorers, WildEarth Kids is back. Sign your class up for WildEarth schools and enjoy a special virtual field trip to Africa with interactive learning tailored for kids.
Very warm welcome to the kids from WildEarth Primary School.
We'll be dedicating the first hour of sunset safaris every Wednesday to our planet's future defenders. WildEarth, it's in your nature.
This elephant has now finished its mud wallow. Alrighty. So now we've had a great view of this Ellie, but because I celebrate diversity, or we all celebrate diversity, and we've got all these camera feeds everywhere, why don't we leave him to do what he needs to do for the next couple of minutes? And we haven't had a look at what the flamingos are doing at Campher's Pan in Kimberley yet today. So why don't we go and line up Campher's Pan and go and see what and how many flamingos are there right now for a bit. Goodness me, look how many flamingos there are today. Beautiful day in Kimberley. You can see not too much wind, bright shiny day. Definitely not being affected by the weather front affecting the rest of the country today. Right. There weren't, I can't remember if there were this many flamingos yesterday. There may have been this many, but spread over a little bit of a wider edge, but definitely more than we've seen in the last couple of days. Campus Dam being a very important site for these lesser flamingos. For those of you just joining the show, and please excuse me repeating this for long-time viewers, but these are lesser flamingos. They are listed as vulnerable to endangered birds across the globe, mainly from habitat destruction. And Campher's Dam is the only breeding site in South Africa for them, and one of only 7 in the world. And their numbers when they were breeding have been counted at over 50,000, so massive number of birds. But this is for sure the largest flock that I've seen while I've been working on the show. You're looking at a couple of hundred birds. They arrive randomly and sporadically. There's no, outside of the breeding season, there doesn't seem to be any pattern that I can find reference to anyway. Morgana, you wanted to know why do flamingos, and indeed, it's not just flamingos, it's a lot of birds as well, stand on one leg. They do it when they tend to be resting and sleeping. The flamingo having a proper bath. That is such a cool thing to see. There we go. Gosh, look at the pink feathers sticking out. Now, birds, I'll continue answering your question in a second. But I mean, having a look at a bird bath like this is just so. It's not rare, but I mean, it's we don't see it very often. So we need to celebrate that. Birds obviously taking care with their feathers. Bathing is just one of those activities that get rid of dirt and build-up of dirt on their skins and parasites. And that bird will then take some time to rearrange its feathers, dry off, and then to add more oils for water repellency. So Morgana, most birds that rest on one leg are most birds that stand on one leg are resting. So they tend to take their weight off of one leg and then the other, and it is a sign of resting. And I've noticed it with any number of birds, if not all birds. I haven't seen penguins do it, come to think about it. TCO, you've asked why are these flamingos white when you thought that flamingos are pink? TCO, no, you're looking at exactly the color that they are. They get that pink coloration from the food that they eat. primarily, and can go through various shades of white into pink and then quite reddish color. But if you look closely, you'll see that these flamingos have a very pink wing. These are lesser flamingos. And what we're looking at is a very healthy population of flamingos. So the color is exactly as to be expected. This is the color of flamingos, and a healthy flamingo at that. And so, to some degree or another, they will have some variation, but what you're looking at here is pretty much how flamingos are, the lesser flamingos, at least anyway, in this area. It's a great thing to see. There's so many of them. Gosh, a couple of hundred at least. I'm told from Nadine, who's speaking right here at the moment, that these flamingos are also very chatty. I don't have an audio feed of what's happening with the pans into my office. It will start to play around with the microphone. So I can't hear what you're hearing, but it's so cool to know that you can hear them chatting and making their noises and having their baths and the lapping of the water. It's just very different to what we were looking at a little bit earlier with an elephant having a mud bath and a waterbuck doing its thing on a mud bank. That bird is having a proper swim. Because they've got these very tightly woven feathers and preen their feathers with that oily secretion, their feathers are relatively waterproof, and so to get water onto their skin, they need to obviously quite actively force it. You can see how they're rubbing their feathers clean. Goodness me. Bath time at Canvas Pan.
Welcome to Africam, your window to Africa's wild spaces. Immerse yourself in the captivating sights and sounds of nature. With our high-definition cameras, you'll feel like you're right there in the heart of the action, where every moment is a surprise waiting to unfold. Join our global community of wildlife enthusiasts as we witness nature's drama unfold in real time.
wonder how long it'll take the birds to move from activity into sleeping, like the ones in the back there, or how long the birds sleep for. I mean, it is the middle of the day. It's 11:56, so almost midday. And although I did say that flamingos arrive at night mostly, so they fly from pan to pan and move at nighttime mostly. They tend to be nocturnal when they're moving. It would make sense that they sleep in the day. I wonder how long they sleep for. A few more birds having a bath now. Because it seems to be rather infectious. I'm just finding it fascinating as to how many different activities we're watching all in the same group and in the same sort of tight shot. See, the wind has picked up, blowing a lot harder than when we first got here, causing the camera to shake around a little bit, and then also the ripples on the water. But we've got all these birds. Some are feeding, some are bathing, some are sleeping, some are preening. Harry, you'd like to know where flamingos build their nests. Harry, they build their nests on mud banks or little close or in the water. They build up the nest from mud, and then they lay their eggs in the mud. So they build it on the floor, Harry, to be honest with you, and not in trees or in cavities or on top of pylons. And they build them relatively close together, and in fact, breeding colonies of birds, it looks, when they leave and they just leave their nest cones behind, it's the most bizarre thing to see. I was lucky enough to see it at a pan called Sewer Pan, massive, massive salt pan in Botswana, where there's an enormous lesser flamingo colony that comes and breeds there every year. I don't remember how many birds. I want to say 1 million, but I could be mistaken, but it's a lot of birds. And when they leave, it's crazy. Right, the wind's picking up and it's getting a bit gusty and whatnot. We've also had now our view of the flamingos. Why don't we go and have a look at what's happening up at Madikwe from where we are now at Jamala. We haven't been back there for some time. It's a couple of 100 kilometers north, Madikwe Game Reserve on the border of Botswana. We're in South Africa still, and Jamala Waterhole is a lodestone for elephant herds. We see a lot of elephant herds here, and right now is no different. We've got a breeding herd of elephant clustered around the freshwater inlet, and some ellies in the background at the wallow. And it was much the same as when we left it, over an hour ago now. Since it's the top of the hour as well, my name is Stefan Winterboer. I'm a naturalist and have been hosting the Live at the Waterhole show along with some of my colleagues. Which means you can ask me questions. And please do, it'd be great to hear from you. And it's live as well. So what we're seeing now at 12 o'clock on Saturday, the 30th of October, is exactly what's happening right now. A couple of seconds that it takes to go into the camera and then all over the world coming out on your screen wherever you are. Just like the flamingos, we've got elephants doing any number of things. So this one elephant sort of left of center is resting its trunk on its tusk. Elephants drinking, elephants having a mud bath, elephants socializing. This one on the far right's got his ears perked up, and so something's bothering him. Could be the fact that there's another herd approaching or some other sort of minor insecurity. Elephant bulls, for the most part, don't like to be disturbed too much. They quite enjoy their solitude. And the play and the boisterous behavior and the sort of energy around elephant herds can be quite off-putting for them unless they're in must and looking for a female to mate with. Here we've got a great view of the surrounding bushveld at Tamala. Simon, you would like to know if birds, I'm assuming you're calling from the UK with this question, would you like to know if any of the birds will be leaving the UK at this time of the year and making their way down to here? Simon, 100%. They've actually left the UK, the ones that will migrate. There might be a few stragglers, but most of the birds have actually been traveling for a couple of weeks already. We get birds like the Wahlberg's eagle that comes from North Africa, sometimes other places around the Mediterranean. But mostly what I'm trying to think of is the European roller will arrive sometime in the next couple of weeks. The European bee eaters, actually for the first time this morning, I heard European bee eaters above our house, and so they back as well. So I think that a lot of the birds that are going to be traveling have already left. You might find steppe eagle. I'm trying to think of if these birds UK or if it's just sort of continental Europe. Um, yeah, I suppose the easy answer for me to say, and it's more of a cop out than anything else. I'm not that good a birder that I know what birds specifically come from the UK. I might have to go and do a bit of research there or ask one of my friends who are much better birders than I for some feedback here. But in general, because the season has already changed and most of the birds have already arrived, barring a few, I think that most of them have left already. Goodness, there's a lot of Ellies around. Tom, you've asked, or you've sent in a comment, you can't believe how huge these elephants are. And I must be able, I must agree with you. Been some big elephant at Jamala today. I mean, it was noticeable. There was a big female elephant a bit earlier, very, very big, robust body. And we've seen a couple of male elephant here today, here and at Tau actually. Those two on the right hand side, they're fairly big ellies. These ellies are full grown males. You're looking at 4 to 5,500 kilograms at the moment. And then Diana, you asked an interesting question now as well, which we cover from time to time, but it's always a good thing to sort of go over some of these things again and again. You wanted to know, at what age do elephant bulls leave the herd? So Diana, very similar to humans, elephant bulls will distance themselves from the natal herd with ever increasing distance from about 16, and they'll break their tie with their natal herd from an observation point of view. So this is just from me observing elephants, anywhere sort of from 16 to 21 years of age, where elephant bulls will then move away from their natal herd. Usually at that point, they join bachelor herds of other bulls and much older bulls, just for companionship and still to learn. But that gives you a pretty good span or range of years that these elephants move on. So what will happen is, as they get older and older, they're like teenagers in a shopping mall, as I say. The youngsters, pre-teens, what do they call them, tweens and early teens, don't want to walk with mom and dad in the shopping center. It's embarrassing and not cool. But they have to be associated with parents, otherwise how do they get fed or get to and from the mall, right? But as they get a bit older, although still directly linked to the herd, that distance starts to increase, and they'll loiter more in areas and hang around at pans and feeding points for longer. And eventually what will happen is the herd just moves on and leaves them behind, and they carry on with their day. They're big enough to look after themselves, have learnt enough from their mothers and the matriarch to make it, and we'll just move on. So the big boy's coming now and dominate the freshwater inlet. He wanted a drink. And I was smelling his mouth and greeting him. I don't think that he is much older than 20 to 25. You can just see by how fresh he looks. Ears are fresh, body is still small, skull in relation to his body is relatively small. And he's just starting his wandering journey. I've often thought over the years, what type of elephant I would be, and I would definitely be a wandering elephant. My sense of adventure and experience would have led me to walk as far and as wide as I could possibly get as an elephant, seeing all the wonders in this particular place. This elephant would be able to walk in a game reserve, would be able to walk all the way to the Crocodile River from where he is now, probably 250 kilometers south, and nothing stopping him from leaving the confines of the park, walking into Mozambique, and eventually down into Tembe if he really wanted to, if he was a bit of a rebel. And going north, he could very easily cross north of here, across the Limpopo River and into Zimbabwe, going into Gonorrhoea or any of the wilderness areas, and could possibly even walk as far as Wangi and the Zambezi River, 1,000 kilometers away. And through conservation efforts in Africa, these corridors are being opened up between these wilderness areas and conservation areas all the time. I definitely don't stay as current as I should with these particular news, but there's huge conservation organizations and thousands of people dedicated to making sure that animal populations are not isolated from one another, and if they so choose, they could move and spread and diversify. And, that's what I'm saying. He could wander for his whole life and not really have to come back to the same place. Shake of the head. Small sign of insecurity. He's coming super close. Let's see how close he gets to the camera. Moving back. Listen to the way he pulls at the branches. Soft footfalls for something so big. That was exactly where we saw the tortoise drinking early this morning. That tortoise is about as big as that elephant's foot. Couldn't really hear him walking. That was the expectation. Elephant have got fleshy, fatty pads on the bottom of their feet. They don't have hooves. And although quite calloused, they walk very quietly. In fact, it's tough to hear an elephant walk. I'm stripping the leaves of this bush. Leave that little bush alone. Like, what are you doing? Using his trunk to curl around the bush and then strip the leaves off, leaving the branches behind. Looks like he could do with a bit of a meal. Yeah. walks off and carries on with his day, or will be walking off and carrying on with his day. Here you can see the tuft of hair at the end of the tail. A little bit earlier, I was remarking on that huge big bull elephant that we saw that had lost that hair. He's just gone bald with age. And you can see what a healthy tail looks like. To some degree, some elephants actually have longer hair. And that's about 30 centimeters long. His hairs are longer than you think and thicker than you think as well. Just dwarfed by the size of the elephant. And just like that, he's carrying on with his day. Who knows where he'll go next or what he's going to do. Pretty cool, eh? I love elephant. Just something about them. Hey, something's got his attention. Yep, he's running away. Something got him a bit spooked. It looked like there was a small little whirlwind, one of those mini heat tornadoes that was coming through the bush and freaked him out. Pretty cool. Alrighty, we've been needing to get up to Old Donyo because I've got an update for you. So why don't we go up to Kenya and I'll tell you about it. So here we are back in Kenya at Africam's Old Donyo Cam, and I just want to get the update because I do have something for you and I'd like to read to you. So Lucy sent through an update. We were looking at some baboons a little bit earlier, and mistakenly from my side, I identified the baboons as olive baboons, when in fact they're yellow baboons. Lucy gave me an update here to say that the guides at Old Donyo have confirmed that all the baboons that we see there are yellow because the olive baboons do not come down from the Chulu Hills or come into camp. So local knowledge is of course best, and I apologize for that misidentification and misrepresentation there. That in fact the baboons that we were looking at and all the baboons that we've seen, I've always been calling them olive baboons, but in fact they've been the yellow baboon. And so I apologize to you for that. I suppose I'm lucky in that I managed to call it a baboon, not something else. But it's also just great. So Lucy, thank you very much for sending through that update. You know, even though we've been doing this, or I've been doing this for so many years, there's often times where, you know, I learn from others and I definitely do enjoy it. So, you know, never be shy to correct me when I've made a mistake. We all do it. And I definitely don't do it with any intent to misinform you, for sure.
BirdLife South Africa is translating birding facts into the country's 12 official languages. Download the Birder app today. For every 12 birds logged by a South African citizen, Birder will make a donation towards this critical project. Alternatively, visit the BirdLife website to make a direct donation. Go wild, go birding with WildEarth.
You often watch patterns. I mean, I'm not much of a fashion person whatsoever. My clothes all tend to be shades of green, grey, and brown, all bought from the same outdoor supplier. So I have the fashion sense of a rock. But I have noticed that it's quite difficult when you have very, stripes on your patterns to try and line up the stripes. And I've always looked at zebra and how perfect they get it across their front shoulder, all the different angles across their body, and it just seems to work well for a zebra. They just got it. And so I don't know. That's our contribution to fashion. Yeah. As Nadine said in my ear now, they look like they're the fashion designers of the bush. For sure, they seem to have gotten the stripes right, which is probably a master class in proportions. Stocky things, a zebra, always look healthy. And just like that, only one animal left. Aldania has been such a source of joy over the last couple of weeks from an animal point of view. At a point, a couple of days ago, we had a animals changing their mix around this pan, so resetting every 7.5 minutes, which is incredible if you think about it. Most other places at this time of the year are looking at about a 20 to 25 minute turnaround between one group of animals and the next. Here comes the next group of animals in, another herd of zebra, made up of a couple of mares and a stallion with some youngsters. Watch the way the zebra come in there. Almost always they start to shake their heads like that when they get close to a pan. Elephant and wildebeest do it as well. I do not know why. I've never found a reliable source of information that says this is why they shake their heads. Lots of speculation, everything from botfly larvae through to, I don't know, greeting ceremonies, but I haven't heard anything conclusive. These all seem like females and quite pregnant at that. Not walking directly at the pan, which is pretty weird. So we just asked our zoomies that operate the cameras here and do such a fantastic job at manipulating these cameras from all over the world. Oh, here they come in from the right side. They just decided to come and check out the pan. So I asked we asked the zoomies if it's been raining recently, if it rained last night, and there's no confirmed reports of rain. But we don't man these cameras 24/7, I don't think, and so tough to confirm. Let's just say that it didn't rain, but it looks like it did. Take it as yes, you can see the dust coming up now. Usually, when one zebra comes into the pan, they all do. They tend to follow one another. That sort of herd mentality. One is now drinking, and so the rest will come. It's a big bull eland coming in from the back. He'll also muscle his way in. I don't think he's going to be shy about sticking his face into the water. Such a nice view with all these zebra. Usually they stand with their butts to us and just wave their tails at us. Now they are facing us, showing us that lovely pattern on their foreheads and cheeks. And of course, the more that pile in, the more come, and eventually, yep, there you go. It reaches a tension where they start to nip and bite and kick at one another. So like there seems to be this I suppose this I'm trying to find the word. It's a big bull eland coming in there. Looks very healthy. Reaches a point where everyone's comfort zones are too close, and then they start kicking out at each other. Rad Art, you just made a statement. There seems to be so many, or so much more variety of species in Africa. Rad Art, where are you from? Let's correspond that. But you are right. Africa is definitely one of those places in the world where the natural history has remained intact. And the speciation is really big because the habitat changes are massive. So there's a big variety between the Southern African bushveld, sort of Southwest African, Namibian, dry Namib Kalahari deserts, and then up into the equatorial savannas on the eastern side of East Africa, and then moving into the equatorial forests on the western side of equatorial Africa, and then huge swathes of forest that sort of extend up into North Africa, where you then have the Sahara Desert, and on the one side, and the Sudan on the other, Ethiopian highlands, enormous mountains, massive rivers. So no, you're 100% right there, Radot. There's a lot of diversity in Africa, and it's because there's so much diversity in habitat. They've now reached the threshold at which they're comfortable with one another, and now they're starting to bicker. Right, to come to that part of the day, we have to say cheers. So I've missed the cue there. Thank you to everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks to all the partners. Thanks to all the staff. Wherever you are in the world, stay safe. We'll catch you next time. All the best. Ciao.